So one field that I'm very passionate about is the field of scientific apologetics. And what that involves is studying different aspects of science and looking at the metaphysical implications of them. And here's what I mean with that. DNA, for example. When you study things about DNA, you begin to wonder, wait a second, this looks like there's a mind behind how you and I function, right? So your goal then, and my goal as we study science, is to always ask the question, what are some of the implications of this theory that I'm learning that goes beyond the theory itself, right? That's what the metaphysical implication is. So one book I'm going to highly recommend and actually go through is called Can Science Explain Everything? So in our apologetic studies, which I'll be doing weekly over the course of the Thanksgiving and Christmas break, I want to encourage you to check out the book Can Science Explain Everything by John Lennox, Professor John Lennox out of Oxford University. Dr. Stephen Meyer has a great book called The Return of the God Hypothesis. That's the one we can maybe study over the course of a few months. But this one I think we can study over the 10 to 12 weeks. And so let me just start from the introduction. I met Dr. Lennox a few years ago in Oxford, and it was a wonderful opportunity to just talk about some of the education opportunities we're involved in and just connect. So that was great. And he gave me this copy of his book. I'm going to go to the preface. And I'm going to read that. And again, we're going to study this book together. I'm inviting anyone who's interested in apologetics or just learning about the evidence for the existence of God as we study science. So he dedicates this book to his wife. And then he goes on to share in the preface, which I'll read. This book has been written in response to many young people and adults who have asked for an introduction to the science and God debate that would have been more accessible than my book, God's Undertaker, Has Science Buried God? In addition, many of them asked me to deal more specifically with the relationship between Christianity and science, as distinct from restricting myself to the evidence for the existence of God. I hope they will find this little book goes some way to meeting their requests. This is in April of 2018. In addition, many have asked him to deal more specifically with the relationship between Christianity and science. Here's actually what's pretty cool. I don't have it right here, but I have it with my other stack of books. I have the book Has Science Buried God, which I got years ago. And some of that might be more technical and heavy for people, but he's saying basically that he's giving us a more condensed version. And this is especially cool for those who are new to apologetics or teenagers who want to study the relationship between science and God. Even today, while I was at a coffee shop, I was able to meet someone who's a mathematician who, as we were talking, the topic of science and faith, science and religion came up. I mean, this is a topic that is very common, and I think that you will do well to learn about the discussion, to learn about the different aspects of the discussion. So for our science class, I'm going to highly recommend that our students go through Can Science Explain Everything, which is a great resource. Now, he did write another book called Cosmic Chemistry shortly after, but that's another day's topic. This one is the one I'm going to focus on right now. So his introduction is talking about cosmic chemistry. He's going to talk about the details again of science and faith and how they relate. So we've done the preface. I'm just going to read a little bit from the cosmic chemistry section, and we'll land our plane for today's video. So he says, make a search on the subject of science and religion, and it will only take a few clicks to convince you that you have stepped into a war zone. Again, you go to different comment threads on the internet and different places, and you see a lot of people talking about this issue of science and faith. So he says that there is what we might call, for convenience, the science side. Some people say the science is on this side of the debate, and then religion is over on the other side. Scientists sometimes will view themselves as the voice of reason. They believe they are working to roll back the tide of ignorance and superstition that has enslaved mankind since we crawled out of the primeval slime. This is the position, the summary of the position. Science, people will say, is an unstoppable force for human development that will deliver answers to many questions about the universe and solve many, if not all, of our human problems: disease, energy, pollution, poverty. At some stage in the future, science will be able to explain everything and answer all our needs. Now, this view is more of a view that I'll categorize as scienticism, the idea that science has the answers to everything. So some people put, they put science on that side, and then there's another side that is called the God side. At the other extreme, there is what we might, for convenience, call the God side. They hold that a divine intelligence is behind everything there is and everything we are. They are looking for and even claim to have found the answers to the same big questions that scientists ask, but in a very different place. So there's the faith side and the science side. Well, here's the thing that I know Dr. Lennox will share and that I believe as well. Science provides explanations for certain things as far as how this works or how that works. But science cannot give us the ultimate fundamental reason behind why those things are so. There's actually a famous a quote by C.S. Lewis, the Cambridge, Oxford individual. You might know about him. He wrote the Chronicles of Narnia and then wrote a non-fiction such as Mere Christianity. And C.S. Lewis actually says that men studied science because they believed that, they believed in these laws. They believed in a lawgiver. That's why they studied science, right? So they believe in the legislature, the one who created the laws that they were studying in science. Johannes Kepler, Isaac Newton, a lot of these guys, they did science, right? Men became scientists because they believed in a lawgiver that explained the principles which they were studying with their scientific methods. I tell people, here's the analogy I use, and we'll land our plane. I tell people that if you push on a computer Control A, it highlights all. If you push Control B, it makes it bold. If you push Control C, it copies. Control V, it'll paste, right? Control Z, undo, which is one of the coolest controls on a computer. But here's the thing. Who programmed the computer, right? So science could, in a sense, analogically speaking here, if you could just go with my analogy for a second, science can tell you what Control A does, but science has not answered the question of why Control A does what it does. Faith gives us the basis for which science can work. Science gives us the explanation for, or the principles at work that are already at work, right? So what caused the beginning to begin, for example, right? That's where faith comes in. Now, here's the other thing that faith does. And I gave a longer talk on this in Chicago, and I can put the link in the description if you want to look at it. But here's the other thing that happens. So science tells you, here's this principle at work. Faith tells you the basis for which that principle even came to be, which is, again, that there was a creator. Let's look at DNA, for example. DNA, we can explain certain elements of how DNA is structured, but why do we have this intelligent system at work, right? Because DNA is like a computer code. Even Bill Gates said that, right? So we have faith that explains the origin for why things are in the first place. Science can then explain the mechanism that might be at work. Faith also explains what the moral boundaries should be, right? That's not something science can tell you. Science cannot tell you whether this should be right or wrong. That's where faith comes in. And as a Christian, I'm speaking from the Christian faith. So we have origin and morality coming from faith. Faith also tells you about meaning in life. What is the meaning of life, right? That's a very important question that can only be answered fundamentally, I believe, from a faith perspective, not from a science perspective. Science is not going to tell you what the meaning of life is. And then lastly, which is where it all comes down to what matters, faith tells us issues about destiny and life beyond life, right? That's something that science cannot tell you. What happens at the end of this life? And in the Bible, we learn that there is a way to know the one who made the universe. And he revealed himself to us in the person of Jesus Christ. He came and he died for our sins, and he made a way for us to be reconciled to our Creator. We were created for a purpose, and unfortunately, while we were created for a purpose, there was a fall that occurred where man sinned against God. But God said that he was going to send a way to have man reconciled to himself. And he made a way through Jesus Christ. And Jesus came, he died for our sins, and he rose again. And because he rose, there's a relationship that can be formed with the Creator of the heavens and the earth. And when we come into that relationship with him, it says in 2 Corinthians chapter 5, he became sin who knew no sin, that we might become the righteousness of God. So even though we have all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, which that's a fact, right? It doesn't take rocket science to figure that out. We have sinned. God is holy and righteous. And he made a way by sending his son, who's also who's perfect. And his son is perfect. And his son took our sins upon himself. And by trusting in him, we can be reconciled to God. That is the good news That is the gospel that is taught in the Bible. And I want to encourage you, if you have not read the Bible, to take a Bible and start in the book of John and go through the Bible and go through John and see, what do you say about Jesus Christ? Who do you say that he is? Because ultimately we can know all the science we want, and we can learn all this knowledge and this, that, and the other. But the question that faith ultimately answers that science cannot answer, and the question that matters greatly and matters most, is where will you and I spend eternity beyond this life? We only get to live here for so many years, but there's life after life. And so we're going to do apologetics. We're going to talk about, can science explain everything? But we also want to tie it back to what the meaning of life fundamentally is and what everything is about, which is ultimately knowing the one who made us. You and I have been made for a purpose. You're fearfully and wonderfully made. Your life matters. My life matters because we're made in the image of God. And God has made a way for us to be reconciled to him. That is the gospel. That is what Christians believe fundamentally as the only hope for mankind. As far as science, my background in science is in chemistry, physics, and then I've also been involved in mathematics. I have a master's in medical physics and medical health physics, and I've done some graduate work for 1 year in chemistry. That's the field that I got my bachelor's degree in as well. I love science. I love studying God's world. I love mathematics, especially because of just how beautiful it is. If you don't think math is beautiful, I'm sorry. We need to talk, because math is beautiful. Sorry if you've had a rough math background and rough math curriculums through the years, but I write math curriculum. That's part of what I do as well, and that's one way you can support my work if you're interested in helping the students in America. That's a big part of what I do, is math curriculum, math history, math application. So anyways, thank you for watching this video. If you want to see more videos like this, please make sure you subscribe. We'll be doing a whole series on Can Science Explain Everything? And we'll do the Return of the God Hypothesis as our next series as well in our Apologetics series. If you have any questions on science and faith, or the philosophy of science, or the history of science, please feel free to leave them in the description section. in the comment section. And I look forward to sharing more with you. My book, Tools for Mastering Mathematics, is also available in the description section. So take care. I'm excited to study science and the implications of the history of science with you. Have a wonderful week ahead, and God bless.